Welcome to Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. We're in Corinthians 2. But one thing that struck me immediately was that persecution was still a very common theme amongst the Christians in Corinth at this time. And to be honest, I cannot imagine what it must have been like for them as Christians. And I'm thankful to God by His mercies that I live in the era that I live in and where I live in. So for me, persecutions would probably look like things like microaggressions, avoidance, judgment, and things like that. But it's nothing, absolutely nothing compared to what these people were going through: tortures, beatings, death, and all these things. But God delivered them from all of that and used it all for His glory. Um, but the yeah, in 1:16 we see that the prayers of the church for them also helped greatly. So one of the things I've tried to start to incorporate into my prayer is praying for those who are being persecuted in places unlike where I am now, where, like I said, microaggressions and all these kind of things. But there are places where Christians are being out and out persecuted and killed, just like in the early days. So would we take out time to pray for them, just as the church prayed for the Christians of that day, and we saw that it was very effectual. Now, I love the metaphor for us as believers as the fragrance of Christ, spreading the knowledge everywhere we go by our presence. Now, this has also been interesting to me because in my everyday life, I've seen and I've had encounters with people that have made me see how true this scripture is. So I've met some people who just instantly, oh, I just really like you. There's just something about you. I was drawn to you. And there are people without even me opening my mouth or doing anything, you just decide that they dislike me or I don't like her. There's just something about her. Paul says in 2:15-16, for those who are perishing, believers are the aroma of death, and to those who are being saved, we are the fragrance of life. So in these kind of situations, I've come to know, perhaps this is what is at play. And I had a popular saying back then before I even, took this scripture to heart or knew it in context. I'll just say, oh, if they say, oh, somebody just said, oh, she didn't like it, I'll be like, yeah, it's just my spirit irritating her demons. Now, obviously, that may not necessarily be true, but then this actually puts it in context, you see. So Paul had to defend his ministry in Corinth against a new wave of speakers in the church who were wealthy and flashy. And this was impressing the members of the church who were less than wealthy and who were impressed by status. But he recognized that some of them wouldn't connect to him, even though no matter how much he defended his ministry, because their hearts had a veil and only God could unveil, could remove that veil. And I guess that goes to my point, about the people who just don't accept. So it could be that, they have a veil, or they're just not part of those who, or they are on the path to perdition and will never get it, So I've just learned to not lose any sleep about it. Before, it used to bother me so much, but hey, now we see that even Paul went through the same. Now, as believers, we carry a light that God shines in our heart. Now, light is something that is very powerful. And this light of God is stored inside of us as earthen vessels, or depending on the Bible translation you read, jars of clay. Now, imagine light inside an enclosed vessel. Any crack or any, poke into it lets the light out. Any opening causes the light to spill and shine forth. And this is what this is what happens to us, or this was what was happening to the Christians at the time. While they were being wounded and tortured and persecuted, the light was shining forth. And Paul said that while being persecuted, his body was being wounded, but his spirit was being renewed. That's what he basically spoke about in chapter 4, verses 7-12. Every day as Christians, we're trading temporary things for eternal things. We should be focused not on our troubles and the things that afflict us, but our daily work for God. And we should also be fixing our eyes on the eternal glory for always. The eternal glory that far outweighs all the trouble that we have. And basically, that's the summary of verse 17 of chapter 4. Now, here's my hashtag getting to know God lesson. God floods our hearts with his light, and that light gives us the ability to have the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. That's to know and see God correctly. As we get to know God in the face of Jesus, we're growing in the knowledge of him, and our hearts are being transformed daily. Thank you for joining me today. As always, it's a pleasure to share with you. And hopefully, God willing, tomorrow I'll be able to do so again. So see you here. Have a wonderful day. God bless.